Welcome to Shut Up and Say Something. I am your host and creator of the show, Deedre Daniel. This podcast is all about how to live a fascinating life, and we're learning how to do that one interesting conversation at a time. We try to stay away from discussing politics, religion, and the ad nauseum topic du jour, but anything else is fair game. And today I am talking to you directly without a guest. I fly solo every fifth episode, so you get me all to yourself. I went to high school in High Wycombe, England. My father was stationed just outside of London with the US Navy. The high school I attended was on a military base, and it was filled with military brats and children of civilian expats living around the globe. There were dorms on that base for children whose parents lived more than a few hours away. And this was a time before email, social media, cell phones, all that stuff. Long distance phone calls cost a lot. And a lot of these kids, their parents lived in Italy or Saudi Arabia, Norway. They lived all over. And these kids were pretty much on their own. And I was so jealous because they had all of this freedom. And they lived in a country that pretty much didn't care if teenagers drank alcohol. And as long as they were in their dorms by a certain time, which was usually like 11 o'clock at night, I think. Someone can probably correct me on that. Anyway, they had all of this unsupervised fun while I lived at home with my very strict parents. And these kids were so interesting. I mean, we were a true melting pot with a diverse student body, and they came from an array of backgrounds, and we were all used to moving like our entire lives every 2 or 3 years. And we grew up having to figure things out, navigating strange cities alone, talking to strangers, eating different food long before the internet was there to help us out. We were teenage survivalists. And when you move around a lot, one of the most difficult questions to answer when meeting someone is, where are you from? Home is where you hang your hat. And being around others with that same shared experience creates the feeling of home. And as Jeremy B said, we are each other's hometown. And our 30th high school reunion was last weekend in Orlando. I organized it. I didn't want to because that's typically a thankless job, but it all came together perfectly. And I didn't want to rent a ballroom and do like a fake prom. I wanted to create something laid back where people could connect instead of shouting over loud music in a dark room. So, Marriott Vacation Club rents out excess timeshare inventory just like a hotel. And I secured a couple of condos for us to hang out in. These had full size kitchens, dining areas, living rooms, and balconies. And special shout out to Sheila, who helped wrangle the RSVPs. And she also attempted to gather important information on a Google Doc, which many people ignored. That's just the way it is with event planning. But the people who attended pitched in to help in so many ways. I mean, they were buying food and drinks, preparing breakfast, decorating, cleaning, and so on, which also served as activities that helped people bond. And they were all so grateful and excited to be there. And I don't even think anyone complained about anything, which is actually pretty incredible when you think about an event with a lot of people. But we just laughed nonstop for days. And that brings me to the flakiness of society. When I first pitched this event to the alums over a year ago, I received an overwhelming response from people who wanted to come. People wanted to invite other classes and their favorite teachers. But when it came down to it, most people backed out. And this is a trend I see with parties all over the country. A majority don't show. Why? And other people refuse to commit until the last minute. Why? Even those who do commit will cancel at the last minute or miss the event without even an explanation. Their name tags and pictures, which someone lovingly created for them, wind up stacked in a sad pile in the graveyard of no-shows. If you want to live a more interesting life, you need to create memorable moments with others. And I want you to commit to having fun. Go all in. It feels good to take a stand, pick a direction, and go. Don't stand in the median of your maybes watching life speed past you. Don't wait for something better to come along. Don't wait to see who will be there before you decide to go. And don't wait to see how you will feel emotionally that day. Decide to enjoy the time you will spend with other people who also committed to be there. They are your people. We as a society are lonelier than ever before, and making friends is harder as an adult. We need to get together more, not less. So say yes to the fest. Make it a priority. Look at your spending and find something you can cut out of your budget. Set aside $10 or $20 a week in a special savings account. In a year, you'll have anywhere between $500 and $1,000 set aside so that you can take a trip with your tribe. Don't let a hurdle get in your way. And that brings me to a man named Jeremy G. A few of us arrived to the reunion a day early. We had dinner in an Irish pub and then wandered over to a fancy speakeasy across the street, which had a dress code. Jeremy lives in Orlando and found out we were in town early, and he decided to meet up with us. He typically wears tank top, shorts, and flip flops. It's his standard off work uniform. And those items are a big no-no on the list at this establishment. And he happened to be wearing a button-down shirt that evening. It was his way of dressing up for us, but he still had on his signature shorts and flip-flops. And the establishment was willing to look past his shorts because, it's Florida, but they were not going to let him in with those flip-flops. This meant he would need to travel an hour to go home and come back in appropriate shoes. And he didn't want to miss a chance to see his friends, some of which he had not seen in 30 years. So he paid a homeless man $20 for his shoes. These shoes were too large and had holes in them and were soaked in urine and had other suspicious stains. And Jeremy wore them barefoot for several hours just so he could see his friends. We closed down that bar, and at 2:30 in the morning, Jeremy tracked down the homeless man, traded him those shoes and $10 for his flip-flops back. Some of you are laughing, and some of you are thinking that's incredibly gross. And the rest of you are probably wondering if he needs to go to the hospital for an infection on his feet. Those thoughts crossed my mind too. But you know what else I started to think about? This guy wasn't going to let a hurdle get in his way. He was willing to wear those shoes so that he could see his friends. He committed. He went all in. And that's incredibly romantic, kind of a badass, and the polar opposite of all the flakiness I see in society today. I mean, the slightest little hurdle, the slightest little excuse, and people flake out. The next time you plan on ghosting someone you are dating or flaking out on an event someone expects you to attend, I want you to think about Jeremy and the homeless man's shoes. Now, granted, some people had a good excuse not to come to the reunion. They were celebrating milestone wedding anniversaries in exotic locales or taking care of family members. And one of our alums, Amy, is the mother of Sasha Hurtado, who is presently competing on The Voice. And you can see Amy cheering her daughter on in the background. Okay, that's a great excuse. If your daughter's on The Voice, you gotta go to that. You should listen to Sasha. Her voice is so pure. It sends chills down my spine. And she reminds me a lot of Carrie Underwood in many ways. I mean, even some of the judges said that. And speaking of Carrie Underwood, Bo Bice, who competed in season 4 of American Idol, was runner-up against Carrie Underwood. And he also went to our high school. And he was one of the people who was all excited to come to the reunion and then no showed. Bad Bo. But he did send us a few messages about why he couldn't make it and how he wanted to come to the next gathering. And that was a common theme. Many people who said they couldn't make it said they wanted to come next time. We always assume there will be a next time. But what if there isn't? Special shout out to the Fandophiles out there. A Fandophile is an unidentified solo listener who was the only person in the same geographic location to download every available episode of this show. If you hear your city called out by me, tell us who you are by sending an email to service@interestingconversations.com. Once revealed, Fandophiles are automatically inducted into the club, receive special recognition, and if they send us their mailing address, a gift from the branded merch collection at interestingconversations.com. And please include a note telling me what you love about the show so I do more of it. That's the kind of feedback that keeps this show going. I want to thank all of the fans listening in the Tampa, St. Pete, and Lakeland markets. You're the bulk of my listeners, so I don't have a solo listener to call out there. Same thing for some of these other markets like Washington, D.C., New York City, Seattle, Tacoma, Atlanta, Los Angeles, and Philadelphia. Lots of listeners there, and I really appreciate it. I'll figure out something to do for you. And here are the solo listeners in the following areas friends who have downloaded every available episode at the time I recorded this episode. I'm still waiting to hear from that person in Brussels, Belgium. They are downloading every episode, but still have not identified themselves. And they are the #1 fandophile. And next up, Lansing, Michigan. Hey, Lansing, you're #2. #3, Great Falls, Montana, followed up by Detroit, someone in the Hartford, New Haven area, and then internationally in the Philippines, metropolitan Manila. And I think I know who that is. I'm pretty sure that's John. Hi, John. Several of you have been traveling, and I appreciate the downloads in other countries. Shout out to Terry for the Costa Rica download and to Brad for giving me a download in the Czech Republic. And I am so excited about the next episode with Hunter Abramson. He founded a company called Relic Tickets, which turns your event ticket into an NFT. As the event host, this blockchain tech helps prevent scalping and allows you to create other value for the ticket holders before and after your event. As the ticket holder, you could sell this NFT later, which could boost the value of your ticket. He'll explain all about it in the next episode. So ensure you have followed the Shut Up and Say Something podcast and allowed notifications so that you know when the next episode drops, which should be close to 11:11 a.m. Eastern every Friday. And please rate the show too, if you don't mind. If you missed the past 4 shows, in episode 16, I spoke with the lovely Tessa Lane. She is a best-selling romance novelist, and she has only been writing for like just shy of 6 years and has published 24 novels, and she has many more in the pipeline. For all of you out there that haven't written your first book, get on it, because look at how many books she's written already. And we talked about our shared experience of being diagnosed with ADHD in middle age, how you could spark up the romance with your long-term partner, and how reading romance novels helps you feel less numb. It allows you to embrace all of your emotions. In episode 17, I have a fascinating conversation with Owl Going Back. He's an award-winning author who has been writing professionally for over 30 years. And he specializes in horror novels. So I selected him to kick off October. And we talk about the natural appeal of horror novels and why people gravitate to them. It turns out that especially during bad times, people want to read horror novels because the stories are usually about overcoming obstacles, which the main characters typically win in the end. Who would have thought horror stories are actually motivational lessons hidden under layers of gore? So reading horror stories could actually help you conquer your fears. And we talk about the power of imagination, how to spot a shyster shaman, spirit animals, American Indian medicine, and other ceremonies, plus so much more. In episode 18, I speak with the brainy Beth Ziesnes, and she is an author, speaker, and tech nerd. Her latest book is filled with more than 450 app recommendations. And we talk about all kinds of new apps, tricks, tools, and more that make your life easier and more efficient. And we discuss how AI will disrupt and enhance all kinds of creative pursuits, including robots that tell jokes. In episode 19, Brian Kern tells us all about his annual Halloween parade he runs in New Orleans. Do you want to be on one of his gigantic and awesome parade floats next year? Go to crewofboo.com for tickets and details about the fun parties and events that go with it. And crew is spelled Krewe and then of Boo, B-O-O. And speaking of fun, I started placing a little Easter egg at the end of each episode after the theme music played. So if you're the type to take your food out of the microwave a few seconds before the timer goes off, you probably have yet to hear this content. That's it for today. See you next Friday at 11:11 a.m. Eastern. Go forward, my friends. Be interesting. You stuck around. Okay, so there is this guy at the reunion named Dan, And Dan took it upon himself to rent an enormous 15 or 16 seat passenger van to transport us around. And he brought dry erase markers for it, which was brilliant because it was this huge white van and very much like a massive dry erase board. And he said, we can autograph it and draw on it like it's a yearbook. I saw a movie on Netflix a few years ago called American Vandal. True crime that's fake, but no less true, about some kids who drew a bunch of penises on cars in the faculty parking lot. It was a mockumentary where people used their sleuthing skills to determine the criminal artist. Those penises had personality. They were big and bold, standing at attention with bulbous testicles covered with spiky cartoonish pubes that demanded some respect. And I thought, they must have had a lot of fun making that movie, drawing all of those penises. And I was a little jealous. I had some penis envy. I wanted in on that cartoon penis graffiti action. And the day came last weekend during the 30th high school reunion when I was the first to grab a dry erase marker and go over to a large side panel of that van. And my husband was shocked, more like proud. He said, I had no idea you were so good at drawing penises. And I didn't realize I was good at them either. I mean, blame it on the movie, but I had been carrying around this hidden talent and desire to display that. And I didn't even know it. I didn't know I had this for several years. My drawing inspired a feeding frenzy of artistic expression over that van. And we were giggling like little kids, despite most of us being parents of adult children. That van brought a ridiculous amount of joy to the artists and the viewers. I mean, what's the harm? It easily wiped off. No one accidentally included a permanent marker like in conference rooms across corporate America. Although Dan did drop the van off without wiping it down. And I wish I was there to see the employees' expressions at the rental car company. I hope it made them laugh. And this is where I would end it by playing Don't You Forget About Me by Simple Minds, if only I had the music license. Maybe one day I can afford that.